Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Mind for Life podcast. Dr. Jeff Bogaczyk here, and today I'm continuing on this series that I started last week on conflict management. And last week we talked about some of the conditions that you should be looking for when conflict may be coming into your life so that you can be prepared. Today we're going to talk about how to diffuse yourself. This is really about self-control, because one of the things that happens in our conflict situations is this: our emotions get in the way. The other person's emotions get in the way. And if we're not careful and we allow our emotions to take over, that's where conflict really can turn toxic, is when our emotions take over and push us in directions and force us to say things that we don't want to say. We say them because our egos have been bruised. And so there's a reason in arguments and in debates and even in political discourse that things tend to go negative, because people get defensive when their character is attacked or when their ego is bruised, and then we lash out and we attack back. And so today, I want to give you some principles on how to diffuse yourself. And next time, we're going to talk about ways that you can diffuse other people. And to be quite honest, many times it's easier to diffuse other people more so than it is to diffuse ourselves. So if you can figure out how to take care of the hard part, diffusing yourself, not getting emotional, not getting defensive, and managing your own ego and your own self-control, then you can work towards managing the other person and helping to diffuse them. So that's what we want to look at today. How do we diffuse ourselves? Number one is a commitment. We might call it a mindset. We might call it a space that we need to step into in the midst of a conflict situation. And remember that all of these things, if I might say it this way, are relationally dependent. As I said in our last episode, not every relationship in your life is important and needs to be maintained. Some of them, it doesn't matter. But for those relationships that matter, the people that you have to work with, the people that you're close to, the people that you care about, the people in your family, the people that you have to be around, let's look at protecting and winning the relationship as a foundation. Ultimately, conflict management is really about finding ways to maintain good relationships with people in the midst of disagreements or misunderstandings, in order to work together, live together, be happy together in whatever the relational context is. So that first step has to be foundational. If it's a relationship that's important, then you are here to win that relationship and maintain that relationship and manage conflict and hopefully resolve conflict to win that relationship. That's first and foremost. So with that in mind, this is a mindset and a perspective that you need to adopt and take. And that's this: that person on the other side of this conflict, that is a human being that I care about, that has dignity, inherent dignity as a person, and I, as a result of that, will treat that person with respect. I will choose to look at the value that they have and treat that person with respect, in all fairness, even though you may not be being treated respectfully yourself. So this is really a commitment that you make based on the fact that I want to maintain and preserve this relationship. This relationship's important to me. It's funny how people will take up compassion and causes for people that they don't even know. that they will take the offense of someone else that they don't even know and defend that person and treat that person respectfully, with dignity, with compassion, that they've never met or never have seen or anything like that. And yet the people that are closest to them, they will disrespect, they will treat horribly, they will not listen to, they will make scoffing and character assassinating comments towards that person. Isn't that funny how that works? That people will take up the cause of somebody they don't even know, defend that person, somebody they don't even know, respect and show compassion towards that person that they don't even know, and yet the people that they love and are closest to, they disrespect, they insult, they dismiss, they devalue. And so that really is a perspective that we first and foremost need to take. Because if we can say to ourselves, I'm going to respect this person because they have value. I'm going to respect this person because they have value as a human being, not only because they have value as a human being, but because they are valuable to me. They are important to me and to my family. And then we make a determination to treat that person with respect. That's commitment number one. Second is this. This is another commitment that we make. I will control my own communication agenda. In other words, in the conflict, each person has an agenda. We are trying to accomplish something. That's our agenda. We want to manage and resolve whatever the conflict is. So I have an agenda on how I want to get through it. And hopefully my agenda is collaborative, is working with the other person, is working towards resolution and not just continually being ornery towards them or saying things to get them mad and riled up, but really respecting them and working towards a resolution. Hopefully that's my agenda. And quite honestly, if we're managing conflict effectively and we're working towards that, that should be our agenda, not just to win, but to manage and resolve collaboratively. And so the second commitment we make is I'm going to control my agenda. I can't control what the other person does. I can't control what they say. I can't control the words that come out of their mouth. What I can do is control the words that come out of my mouth. What I can do is work to maintain and control my emotions. And I think this is one of the most difficult things that we have when we are trying to manage conflict, is making sure we respond to the other person regarding what they say to us, as opposed to reacting emotionally to what they say. And so the way that we respond is making a commitment that I'm going to control my communication agenda. If somebody lashes out at me, if somebody accuses me of something, if somebody makes a derogatory comment towards me or my character or whatever, the answer to that is to respond and not react. The reaction is, oh yeah, you said that about me. Well, here's what you do, and here's why you're bad, and here's why you're a mean person, as opposed to responding by saying, I hear what you're saying, but let's please focus back on the issue. Those character assassinations, or we call them ad hominem attacks, usually come out when somebody is losing or they feel attacked or they feel threatened. And so then they do what? They react, they attack back, they make derogatory comments to try to defend themselves, take the focus off of them, put the focus back on me. And so I have to be able to absorb those blows for people who don't manage conflict well, right? I have to be able to control my agenda. I have to be able to control what I'm trying to accomplish and kind of like absorbing the blows. I don't know if you've ever seen a boxer who just kind of like sits there and takes the blows and tires the other person out. And that's kind of like what this is doing. You are not reacting back, but you are kind of sitting back and dodging and taking the blows that the other person is giving you and letting them deflect off to the sides so that you're not being dragged down a rabbit hole and talking about something that's not the issue, but rather you are reversing that back by controlling your agenda and bringing it back to the issue at hand. So I will control my own communication agenda. In other words, I'm going to respond with self-control. I'm going to redirect the conversation back. When someone attacks me, I'm going to avoid the temptation to react and attack them back and defend myself and say something to the effect of, I hear what you're saying. Let's talk about that later and get back to the issue at hand. And there are a couple of other ways to diffuse yourself, and I think they are found in certain kind of questions. Number one, by thinking perhaps this conflict could be a good thing. We talked in the last episode, and if you haven't listened to that, I would encourage you to go back. This is actually a course on conflict management in a podcast format. So go back and listen to that and recognize that conflict is a catalyst. I mentioned it before. It's an opportunity to grow more intimate in your relationship with someone else, right? We only find conflict as we get closer to one another, as we get closer to other people, have to work with them and find that we don't all fit together in great and easy ways. And so when we encounter conflict, we know, oh, that's something that we've got to work through. That's something that we got to navigate. That's something that we have to figure out how we're going to bring this issue together in our relationship. And so in that sense, conflict can be a good thing. And so if you can have some thoughts in your mind when you're in a conflict situation with the other person by saying, how can this be good? Is this an opportunity for good? And I can promise you this, in the worst conflict that you have with someone, you can always find a pot of gold at the end of that. And I don't want to call it a rainbow, but let's call it at the end of that conflict. Or there is a treasure at the end of that if you can look positively towards that you're going to know this person better, that you will work with this person better, that you're going to develop a better relationship, that you're going to be able to navigate some things. And if nothing else, you're going to learn about yourself and how you can grow and how you can be a better person and be a better communicator and what to do and what not to do. And then I've learned some things about myself in terrible conflict situations and go, boy, I can be a real bad person at times and say things maybe I shouldn't say, and do things maybe I shouldn't do. And that really kind of is a convicting thing, because when you go through those conflicts, you look at yourself in the midst of it and say, boy, I can really say some bad things or nasty things here. But then you get to the other side of it and go, okay, I don't want to do that anymore. And that has given me perspective on how I should manage those situations in the future. Number two, they always have a different perspective than you do. They are always seeing things differently than you are. And what we should ask ourselves is, how are they seeing things differently than I am? How our perceptions of things are never the same. We have histories and baggage and past family situations and traumas and insecurities that we all have, that we bring into every relationship we have. And all of those things are variables, we can call them, that factor into how we make interpretations on what's happening now. And so you have a bad relationship with a parent, and the parent was abusive in ways. And when you would get in conflict or get into disagreements with that parent, they would abuse you and say things. And so what happens? You bring that into, because you were traumatized and emotionally abused and verbally abused, and you associate conflict and how you relate with people now back to those experiences that were so formative. So when you come into that, all of that baggage, all of that comes in with you. And we don't look at someone else's potential past histories. We only look at ours. And guess what? A lot of times we don't even look at ours through those lenses of, why am I being so defensive? Did something happen to me that I'm getting so defensive about this? And so it's always good to put yourself in the other person's shoes and try to see how they are perceiving it differently than you are. That's something we're going to get to, and how to diffuse the other person in our next episode. But you can step into their perspective as best as you can to try to say, how are they seeing things differently than I am? I've learned this lesson. When someone comes to me mad about something, instead of immediately getting defensive about it and saying something like, we shouldn't be mad about that, what I do is this. I try to go, if I was in their situation, if I was in their shoes, if that happened to me the same way it happened to them, would I be as upset about it as they are? And the answer inevitably is, yes, I would. Yes, I would. And when I go, boy, if that happened to me, yeah, I would be mad. Even though I'm on the other side of it, I can say, if that happened to me, I would be livid in the same way that they are. And what does that do? That gives me an opportunity to give grace to the person and go, yeah, I'd be mad just like you are. I can understand where you're seeing it. I can see things from your perspective in a little way. So how are you seeing things differently? You can also recognize this when it comes to perspective. You don't know everything about the other person. You don't know everything about you don't, like I just said, don't know everything about that past history and baggage that they are bringing into it. And maybe it was a past boss, or maybe it was a past coworker that traumatized them, or they had experiences that caused them emotional trauma. And, those things stay with us. We don't just push aside our emotional traumas or our emotional experiences, or those periods of time where we were deeply embarrassed because we didn't do something right and someone called us out publicly. Those things stick with us. And unless we reconcile those things and figure out how to deal with them, they come with us into every other relationship and every other situation, and especially those ones that are similar. If you had a boss, for example, who was micromanaging and abusive and used power to force you to do things and, abuse that power over you. Well, when it comes to another boss, you're bringing all of that in, and you may want to give that person grace, but it's not easy to just kind of say, okay, yeah, we're going to make the change here, because the roles are the same and you bring that into the role. So what we can do on the other side of it is go, okay, what don't I understand about that perspective? As I mentioned, how am I seeing things differently from them? Why don't I understand their emotional response? What don't I understand about their ideas? How can I understand that better? And then third, I think this is a self-control issue, is, am I just doing things to antagonize them? That's a tough one to talk about, right? Because sometimes in conflict situations, especially with people that you know and are close to, you know the buttons to push. You know the words to say or what not to say. You know the looks, the eye rolls, the nonverbals. You know the things that can trigger a person. And this goes back to making a decision to respect the other individual and give them the dignity that they deserve. Because when we get in those situations, it is so easy for us to do those little things to intensify it and to trigger them and to get them emotional. And what do? We do it to get them emotional in order to say, yeah, see, you're emotional. You can't control yourself. You can't handle yourself, when we did it on purpose. So sometimes we do that, and that really is a self-control issue, that we don't do things to trigger the other person. And then a final question is, are they mad with me, or are they mad about something else? In other words, am I the target? Because sometimes we miss that, right? We get defensive because that person is screaming and screaming and screaming, or talking and talking and talking, and it really has nothing to do with us. It's just they're mad about the situation, and we take it personally. Don't take on an offense that is not about you. That helps you to maintain control and not get defensive yourself, because we just will take things personally when they are not meant to be taken personally. And sometimes it's helpful to make sure that that is separate in the conflict, because the other person may be yelling at you, or they may be mad at you, and it's not really you, it's the situation. And it's one thing to be able to understand that and say, okay, I get this is not about me, but you are taking your frustrations out on me because I'm here. I am not going to take that personally. And so that is another way to make sure that we are maintaining our own self-control and working through conflict and diffusing ourselves so that we don't emotionally react. Another question you can ask is this: is what I'm asking them to do in this conflict, is it realistic? Is the ask realistic, or is it a dream world fantasy? And how do you know that? You ask it back about yourself and say, if I were in their shoes and someone asked me to do what I'm asking them to do, would I do it? And the answer is probably no. And if it's a definite no, then you should be more realistic about your expectations of the other person. I've said this before in videos. I'll say it again. A lot of times our expectations of other people are unrealistic. We expect more of other people. We expect them to behave and to act and to talk and to do in certain ways that we never would do ourselves. And if we could just reverse that and go, yeah, I would never do that, or I mess up, or I make mistakes, and give a little bit of grace, give a little bit of space, that helps us when it comes to diffusing ourselves. And then finally, ask yourself this question: are you just trying to win the argument, or are you trying to manage the conflict and win the relationship? When we get defensive, and there are techniques, there's a book by Schopenhauer, I think, who talks about the tactics that people use when they're in an argument, when they're losing. And we learn those: how to debate, how to twist, how to make attacks, how to go down rabbit holes, red herring, ad hominem, name it, rhetorical devices to be able to shift things off so that we can win. Winning is not the same as managing and resolving. Winning is a win-lose proposition. I win, you lose. If I am here to win at all costs, I will do whatever I have to do to win. That doesn't manage or resolve the conflict. And I promise you, if you win at all costs, you will lose important relationships in your life. That goes back to the commitment number one. This person is important. This relationship is important. And so the next time you're in a conflict situation, I want you to think about what's going on in your own mind and your own emotions, and take these principles to try and control yourself. Remember, self-control is one of the most difficult things to do in conflict, but it is one of the most important things that can help manage and resolve conflict better in your life, will help preserve the relationships that are most important to you, and will ultimately give you more fulfillment, greater happiness in life. Remember, you can't always resolve conflict. You have to manage it. And the best way to manage it is, number one, by diffusing yourself, having the self-control, and responding rather than reacting. I hope this has been helpful to you. Appreciate you watching. If the podcast has been a benefit, please consider subscribing on YouTube or on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify Podcasts. If you know someone who is going through this and needs some help, forward on both of these episodes, and we'll be continuing in our next one with how do we diffuse other people. Thanks again for listening. Thanks for watching. Have a wonderful week.